Cory Reamer, welcome back to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I hope you're doing well.
Doing well. Appreciate you having me on.
No doubt. And give us an update, man. What are you up to these days?
Oh, man, I'm living in Birmingham, working at Bryant Bank, working in the capital markets group. So been over here for almost 2 years now. And, Bryant Bank home is in Tuscaloosa, but I'm up in the Birmingham office. So spend a lot of time on the road traveling and working all across the state of Alabama. So probably run into a lot of people that are calling into your show.
No doubt, and spend a lot of time talking Alabama football. Let me ask you, when you look back at Nick Saban and what you learned playing under him, how do you apply that daily in your practice there?
Yeah, well, there is I don't think there's enough time in this interview, but, you don't realize it when you're going through it, the type of habits that you're creating just by the things that he's asking you to do every day. I guess the biggest thing probably, and everybody hears it, probably hates the word, but it really helped me focus on, especially being in sales and the whole process of everything. And it's not just, the process just doesn't apply to a football team. It applies to everything that we do. And keeping your mind, on the things that you need to be doing to dictate the final outcome is probably, and that there's a lot of things that go into that, a lot more in depth. But that's something that I think about on a daily basis when things aren't going our way or we're not seeing like we're getting done what we need to get done. It keeps you kind of focused on just keep doing what you're supposed to be doing, and the results will come. And making sure that the biggest speech he always gave us was, whatever your role, be the best at it. He always used the street sweeper. If you were a street sweeper, you be the best street sweeper there is. It doesn't matter what your role is. Don't try to do somebody else's job. Do your job at the best of your ability. That was probably something that I still think about on a daily basis that's, frankly ingrained because he said it so much, but there's something to it. He knows what he's talking about.
How have you seen Nick Saban change over 10 years?
Well, I think he was, when he first came in, it was probably the day that he got hired and it was announced on ESPN. The team was in the locker room and watching on TV, and they were, the talking heads were dissecting everything about the hire, and we found out it was kind of right in the middle of our off-season program, and we saw him. Clips they were kept showing were when he was with the Miami Dolphins, and the first round draft pick that he had from the year before showed up to practice without a helmet on, and that poor guy got dog cussed all the way from the 50-yard line back to the practice locker room, and that's the first thing we saw about this guy. And I think that really showed where he was, and he's brought that same mentality when he first stepped foot on campus. Was I got to change the culture, I got to change everything that was here before. To make this place successful, that have the success that they were used to having, and that was a tough time. They do the fourth quarter program now, and it's been shortened in length pretty substantially from that first year because he obviously saw we had a lot more work than he was expecting, a lot more work to do to get ready for that first season, and it was nonstop. It was a grind, and I think as he's gotten. The years have gone on, and I don't think he's gotten softer as everybody thinks, but I think that he is definitely in a better spot now with the type of talent that he's bringing in. He's still pushing those guys day to day. I was at practice a couple of weeks ago and watching him get after the young kids that had just showed up on campus, and that has definitely not changed. But I think he is he's really found a home down there and really enjoys being in Tuscaloosa, being surrounded by the people that he's got around him now. And the competitiveness has definitely not fallen off 1 ounce since he showed up. But I think he enjoys seeing all his former players coming back, and he really looks at this place as a home now, more so than he thought maybe it would be when he first stepped foot on campus.
Cory, I don't guess I've ever asked a player this, but I've recently went through Malmore's book, and if you have ever had a chance to do it, you lived it, so you probably don't need to read the book, man. But when you talk about all the rumors. Nick Saban's going to be the coach. I'm not going to be the Alabama coach. I mean, we remember that press conference. You look at Rich Rodriguez. How stressful was that in that locker room full of players going through the uncertainty of where Alabama was going?
Yeah, it was tough. Headed into that bowl game, we were playing down in Shreveport, and it was a tough time for us. We knew that there were some things that were happening, and they had a players meeting, and they told us that they were going to be moving on from Coach Shula, and he didn't get to address us that night. And Coach Kynes was taking over for the bowl game, and he was the guy that had to deliver that message to us, and we hated it for Coach Shula because we were his guys. He recruited all of us, and that was definitely a tough moment. And then there was a lot of unknown. We knew we were going to every practice for that bowl game, and we probably the guys that were around us from as far as the coaching staff and a personnel standpoint might not be there after this bowl game was over with. And there was a lot of speculation of what was going on. A lot of names got thrown out, and you sit there and you heard internally that Coach Saban was definitely on the short list, and you kept seeing him saying that he had no interest. And then Rich Rodriguez was on we had no idea where we were headed, and then all of a sudden it looked just like it was going to be Rich Rodriguez, like he was the guy. It was a done deal from all the insiders that know more than the players did. That's who we were expecting to show up and greet the team, and we were getting fully prepared for it. And then all of a sudden that fell through, and the next day they announced that Coach Saban is been officially hired, and it was just kind of a whirlwind of unknown. Just trying to figure out how we're going to fit in with the new system. Players looking at what type of system each coach that was mentioned, what they did, the defense that they ran, who was going to be the coordinators, and how are we going to fit in with this new guy. And the good thing about Coach Saban, when he got there, he really didn't give you much time to think. He got right to it, told us exactly what his plans were. He was starting from scratch. We were going through fourth quarter program. He's going to figure out who's going to be his team through that. And it was even through all that, him trying to get to know us trying to get to know him, still trying to fill out his coaching staff. It was a whirlwind. It was a crazy time.
When did you realize? Nobody could have predicted. I mean, Nick Saban, if we put him on a polygraph, I don't think he could have thought, I'll win 4 national titles. To be able to accomplish 119 wins out of 138 tries, 4 national titles. But when I look back at when did you buy in and say, this guy is going to do something special at Alabama?
I think going through, you either, the thing about Coach Saban is he made it very clear early on that if you didn't buy into what he was selling, you were not going to have a chance to be a part of what we were going to be doing that season. And that was always his message early on, because, we had some guys that were, a part of the program that weren't really thrilled. The regime change was a lot stricter. The things that we were asked to do was not what it was before, and they asked a lot of us to buy into this program. And I think halfway through that season, when we got beat by Louisiana Monroe, Coach Saban gave a speech after that game, and he had done some things in that game that he typically would not do, that were not probably he would never do again. And he told us afterwards that he would never go against his guts and his thoughts on how he handles certain situations, and because the players were asking of him to do something that he didn't necessarily want to do, and he ended up doing it, and he regrets it, I'm sure, to this day. And I think that day, as soon as that day, when he gave us that speech in the locker room after that game, we knew that he knows what the right thing to do is, and we better buy in, because if I said, if we don't, he's going to move on and find somebody who is going to do what he's asking of him. And watching the success that he's had at other places, we knew he had the capability of leading us back to having success. And watching the recruiting classes that he brought in, it didn't take long for a lot of us, but there was a good portion of the guys that were in Tuscaloosa at the time that really never wanted to buy in, and that was, the struggles that we had that first year. it was a lot. There was evidence of that through that first season, and then as soon as that season was over with, you could tell right then that we were going to figure it out and we were going to get to Atlanta. And the things that he did that were so different as far as the mental side during the summer workouts, bringing in all these experts to talk to us and change our mindset of what we thought about every day. This guy knows what he's doing.
We're talking to Cory Reamer, linebacker on the national championship team in 2009. I want to clear a myth up. You may or may not know that this is a myth, but maybe it's not a myth. 2007 Independence Bowl. I've often heard that Nick Saban, after the win, drove the bus around to the front of the Independence Bowl and said, "You guys take a picture here because we're not coming back to the Independence Bowl." Any truth to that? I mean, have you ever heard that story?
I don't know if I've heard it talked about, but I do know that there was that message.
Okay.
When it was over with, great win, congratulations, but this is not what the standard for this university. And those guys that are leaving, we appreciate all that you've done for us, but those guys are going to be back here next year. And that's how quickly, you always hear about his 24-hour rule. As soon as that game was over with, he was already preaching to the next year's crew, this is not the level of the standard that this university, this is not why they brought me in here to be in Shreveport playing this game. And he made that definitely clear to everybody. And I think that's the group of seniors that we had that were coming back for that next season was one of the best groups of seniors that we ever had. There was only 8 of them, but they were a big reason why we bought in and we showed up for the all-season program ready to go, because those 8 guys stuck around and they bought into Coach Saban's system and made sure that everybody else was following along. The Rashad Johnsons and the John Parker Wilsons and Antoine Caldwells, those guys were critical in us turning that program around so quickly, because they were such good leaders and made sure that everybody on that field, if you were a freshman that just got recruited by Coach Saban, or if you were going to be a junior or whatever it was, you came to be a part of this, then nobody's bigger than the team. Everybody's buying in, and nobody's going to get a break.
Hey, Cory, I've got a few more questions. I don't want to interfere with anything you're doing there, but do you have time for a few more questions?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely.
Okay. Cory Reamer right now, linebacker at the University of Alabama. I mean, this is fascinating stuff. I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. I'd like to walk us through that 2008. When we look back at the launching pad of Alabama's dynasty, I go back to that Clemson game of 2008. I think many people do. Do you look at that as that game that maybe was a launching pad to beat a top 10 team like Clemson?
Oh, there's no doubt. All throughout, like I said, as soon as that Independence Bowl was over with and we started getting ready for that next season, Clemson was the team that everybody was talking about. They were going to be the team to be, going to make a run to the national championship. They had the 2 great running backs, Thunder and Lightning, had talent everywhere, all over the field. And Coach Saban made sure every day, this is the standard that who is the best out there that we have to be the best in the country. And Clemson was that team. It was the perfect, and that's really when the schedule started changing, where you came out with a big game early on to set the tempo for the season. And I thought it was a great move by him, because you didn't get that lull of the first couple games until you started to get into SEC play. It was let's see what we're about day one. And when we showed up, by the time we went through spring ball and all summer workouts, and Coach Cochran and his crew spent so much time with us in the weight room and preaching about we're going to show up, we're going to be ready for this game. And by the time, all you heard about the whole summer was everybody on all the sports talk shows was talking about how good Clemson was going to be, and hopefully we just kept it close. And by the time we showed up to the Georgia Dome to play those guys, we knew before we even stepped foot on that field that we were going to beat the hell out of them. And it came out. We came out early and shut them down early and often. And I think that was exactly what you said. It was the launching pad for the rest of that season. It gave us a level of confidence that we didn't know that we had that Coach Saban and everybody did a great job of building up throughout the off season up to that game, and then we took off from there. We knew we couldn't be beat. And, we ran into a great team in Atlanta on the other end of the bookend games in Atlanta. We ran into a good team in Florida, but looking back, that was a game that we should have won. We shouldn't have lost that game. He could have turned us around and had us in a national championship game within 2 years. And, that whole season of 2008 was, LSU was a big team. Auburn was good. Everybody was good. And for us to go through that season and win the games that we did, it only you could tell how, and I think everybody from that point on, after that Clemson game, really bought in to everything that he was selling, because we just went in and beat a team that we weren't supposed to beat, that nobody ever expected us to beat, and put us back on the map where Alabama belonged.
That is awesome stuff. We're talking to Cory Reamer right now. Let me go to the 2009 season, because I want to look at it like this. I mean, I grew up an Alabama fan. I'm not ashamed of that. I talk about I'm a biased member of the media. I'm not an unbiased guy. So when I look at Alabama football, when we look at 2009, you look at reestablishing that brand of Alabama football. Do you ever look back and say, that you were the concrete, the foundation, your unit that won that 2008 undefeated season that went to Florida, lost, but then 2009. Do you look at it as a point of saying reestablishing that brand of Alabama football? Do you take a sense of pride in that?
Absolutely. I think that, a lot of people I hear, all over the state, even traveling and talking to customers. I was talking to one the other day, and he made a comment about, that one of the coaches had made at a Red Elephant Club event or something like that, and told these fans of ours that, we're going to be good as soon as we can get our guys in here, talking about Coach Saban, the recruits that they were bringing in under Coach Saban. And, here we are still, there's still two classes of Coach Shula's guys that are still there. And, we bought in, like I said, the senior class before me, our senior class. We weren't going to just sit around and be ushered out so that they could all start having success behind us. We knew that we could be really good right then and there. And I think we took a lot of pride. As soon as we lost that game in Atlanta against Florida, I'll never forget Rolando McClain standing up in the middle of the locker room as a young player. Just shows you what kind of leader he was. But having the entire team on a knee and he standing in the middle, giving the same conversation, giving the same talk that Coach Saban gave us the year before after the Independence Bowl, of saying, y'all don't forget what this feeling is like. Losing this game that we should have won, we worked our tails off to get here. We're not going to have this happen again. And that 2009 season, we bought in to being the best that we know we could. We had great players across the board, but that was a huge turning point for that team as well, was after losing that. As much as we hated losing to Florida that year, we knew that they were the top echelon, that we had to be better than them, and we worked our tails off from that moment on to be ready again for that matchup, because we knew we were going to see them again in Atlanta the next year. But yeah, absolutely. We established, brought back the brand of football that Alabama was used to: hard-nosed defense, pound the rock, run the football. And even since then, that the game has changed so much that the offense has changed, but the thing about Alabama that hasn't changed is the hard-nosed defense that shows up, and our goal is to not let anybody gain an inch. And I think you can definitely see that looking over all the championships that he's won since he's there. The defense has definitely been a strong point. Of course, our offense has been phenomenal over the last few years. The amount of people that we've had, the Julio Joneses of the world, Trent Richardsons, Mark Ingrams, those guys have done a great job. But, I think a lot of people appreciated that 2009 team because it was so reminiscent of the teams that they were used to seeing on the field from the 92 championship teams and all the great teams that were for us.
Yeah, I thought it was very unique. We did this on Monday, and it was not unanimous, but it was consensus. The 2009 team, by far, the favorite national title under the Nick Saban. Let me go to the Texas game. What is the memory that stands with you the longest of looking at that championship game?
Oh, just one. I think, you never will forget running on the field for the first time when the game's about to start. You know, we'd been out there warming up, getting ready to go, but that moment when we took the field, when everybody was in their seats and it was game time, the amount of people that were screaming and the burnt orange and the crimson that was in that stadium at a historic venue, I'll never forget that run, just staring up in the crowd and seeing the flashes going off on all the cameras. And then, you know, Coach Saban had always preached, you know, don't get caught up in the moment. And I think everybody did, you know, at that point in time. But then you saw as soon as that was over with and the first kick went off, you could tell everybody had their focus. And, you know, my favorite part about that game is we had faced a lot of adversity throughout the season, having to block 2 field goals against Tennessee to win that ball game, and a number of other games that we were struggling towards the end of the game and had to really stand up, bow our necks to win some ball games. But to come out and have as much go against us in that first quarter and that second quarter, and for our team to stand up and really bow your neck and say, I don't care, you can have the ball on the 10, you're not getting in. That defense did a great job of really shutting their offense down. And then from then on, we knew that when we gave them their ball in their territory 2 or 3 times and they got 2 field goals out of it, we knew we had control of that game. We knew we had them beat. We had the edge mentally on them because we know how proud we were for stopping them, giving them the ball so many opportunities to score early on, and them only to walk away with field goals. We knew how excited we were about that, and how that means that they were just as deflated on the other sideline. That was a huge turning point, you know, and then going into halftime with a huge lead, and then everybody was celebrating like the game was over, and then a couple players stood up. Baron Hubers, I know you know him. He's
Sure.
He's one of those guys that stood up and said, you know, this is only halfway through, and it showed the maturity of that team where we could forget about that first half and move on. And we knew we had another ball, you know, half of a game to play, and not shut it down and not be complacent and go out there and finish the job.